The FIA is facing a very difficult period right now, and the departure of two high-profile members just goes to prove that even more. To top that off, it seems like the relationship between the governing body and the sport in general, especially the FOM, is slowly but surely deteriorating to the point of these two actually talking about a potential split. But if a split was about to happen, would it be in the best interest for both sides? And what's the easiest yet most painful solution to this entire situation being fixed? It's safe to say that the FIA has suffered a lot of backlash in the past couple of years, but ever since Ben Mohammed Saleem took over the reins, it seems like there are a lot of positives that have happened in the sport. For example, the governing body is pushing towards more teams on the grid, maximising the slot number to 12, and they are the ones that recognised the potential of Andretti in the sport. However, this is something that they've clashed over with F1 and the FOM for so long, to the point of them bringing out the splitting question. Although it's difficult to say who would benefit more from this split, let's not get that far away and let's see what the issue with the FIA is in the first place. The governing body of the sport has been shaken down by some very worrying departures, with the latest one being Steve Nielsen, the sporting director of the sport. The shocking fact is that he didn't even last a full year on this position, having been put on it in January, but then, according to the BBC, claimed that he was very unhappy with the events that have happened in the FIA, which is why he doesn't want to continue to do his job anymore. Nielsen has reportedly suggested many changes to race operations, but none of them were implemented by the governing body, who were just not willing to accept any other philosophy other than Ben Saleem's, which is then again something that led to another high-profile departure, the one of Deborah Mayer, who quit her position as the governing body's head of the Commission for Women. Now, these two hold a very high value in the case of the FIA doing the wrong politics here, because for starters, both of them were highly supported by the F1 team bosses, especially Nielsen, who worked as a sporting director for a variety of teams such as Tyrrell, Benetton, Renault and Williams. The first two names shall tell you that this guy has been in the sport for quite some time, and with that, the experience he has is not something you could compare with only a handful of similar profile members of his. On the other hand, the last thing that you want to do in a diversifying sport is to have the head of the Commission for Women quit, which does imply that the FIA may not want to go in a new democratic direction in which the women in the sport would be more represented, something that has been talked about far and wide among all the teams. But Nielsen did not limit himself to exclusive FIA work. He was also very much present for F1 themselves following the takeover of Liberty Media, so that itself shows that he could be taking F1's side in the never-ending dispute that these two have between themselves. Obviously, there is another case here that also fuels the flame between the F1 and the FIA, and that is the investigation that the governing body has launched on Susie Wolff for alleged conflict of interest without any based proofs. The fact that they dropped it as soon as they started goes to show that maybe the leadership of the FIA needs to be reviewed, and amidst all of the trouble that Ben Saleem has gone through to bring credibility back after the mess that Massey made, this mission could very well fall into the water very easily. Now that the tensions are higher than ever, Andretti is serving as the sacrificial lamb from the FIA and the escaping point from the F1's side. Is there actually something we should be worried about? Splits are not a novelty in the sport, but for the majority of times they haven't ended well. Just look at what IndyCar has gone through back in 1994, and I don't really think that's something we should be cheering to happen in the most elitist racing competition in the world. However, changes do need to happen, and what people tend to underestimate is that the FIA is not working exclusively for F1. This is a governing body for the World Rally Championship, World Rallycross Championship, World Endurance Championship, Karting World Championship, World Rally Raid Championship, as well as the Formula E World Championship. The influence of the FIA, however, is primarily based on the F1 as its most popular branch, so if they're to be cut out from the sport, it would be a massive loss on their end. But F1 wouldn't go unhurt either. They're about to lose a governing body that does everything for them, from technical specifications to the cars, all the way to track rules and race directors. And this is definitely not an operation you want to underestimate. Sure, F1 does have its say when it comes to where the sport should be moving, but that itself is nothing if you don't have the right people to actually put it in the right place and make it work. A brief example is the latest talking point that the F1 wants to see implemented, which is easier overtaking, and that's something that the FIA has been tirelessly working on in order to make it happen, which may be seen in the following years as the technical regulations are progressing more and more towards narrower and heavier cars that promote closer racing. Yet, BBC reports say that a number of sources from the F1 circles are suggesting that Formula One is slowly but surely considering breaking away from the FIA, and the main reason is the detrimental behaviour of Ben Mohammed Salim. Yep, the importance of the governing body to the sport is not to be messed around with, but then again, it's not something that can't be replicated or modelled in today's era of technology and staff being put at the right place of command. With the departure of the latest two high-profile members of the FIA, they are in a very unstable position, and if the reports from the BBC are to be believed, then we're going to see a very troublesome period ahead of us. When talking about this matter, Andrew Benson from the BBC emphasised the worries that F1 had regarding the actions of Ben Mohammed Salim, adding, "The controversy comes in the wake of worsening relations between F1 and the FIA on a number of fronts. FIA President Mohammed Ben Salim said in February that he was stepping back from direct involvement in F1, a move that came after a series of controversies since he was elected president in December 2021. These included receiving a cease and desist letter from F1's lawyers following his reaction on social media to a story claiming Saudi Arabia's public investment fund had tried to buy the sport for $20 billion, and the emergence of an historic website that appeared to suggest that he had made misogynistic remarks. A number of sources told BBC Sport at the season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix last month that if Ben Salim continued to act in a manner senior figures considered detrimental for the sport, F1 owners Liberty Media would lose patience and consider breaking away from the FIA. The fact that this was already considered last year but things were smoothed over just goes to emphasise the importance of the issue that we have here, and more likely than not, the only viable solution in which both parties would remain in a healthy collaboration is with Ben Salim being gone. He's been involved in quite some scandals, such as the misogynistic comments he's made a long time ago, as well as him giving himself the right to comment about the values of F1 and how the sport should not overestimate itself, which could put F1 into a state of deprivation from investors. The general dissatisfaction is growing, but then again, we need to remember the times before Salim and how the 2021 season has left a scar that nobody wants to open, especially not the Mercedes team fans. It is always going to be a game in which one side wins a little bit more than the other, but if the situations that are currently happening between the F1 and the FIA are not solvable, then I guess we'd be forced into a state of separatism, and the FIA would have to detach itself from its most profitable and most popular branch. Do you think that a split between F1 and the FIA is possible? Let us know in the comments below.